Deep Dive with David Stendahl, where we trade without ego, no emotion, no greed, and no opinion. Before we begin tonight's video blog, please read over our trading disclaimer and remember to trade smart and accept the reality that trading futures is risky. This presentation does not provide buy-sell recommendations, and our information is strictly provided for educational purposes only. As always, trade at your own risk and analysis. Hey, it's David Stendahl with tonight's Deep Dive. It is November 7th, 2017, and I'm going to talk very briefly about two different markets today. First one's not even on the list, but it's fairly similar to the 10-year notes as far as its outlook with everything we see here in our normal Deep Dive. But I want to point out the 30-year bonds, and in that particular case, we'll go ahead and pull up our trade station here. We got daily bars here. What I want to do is I want to point out the fact that it just recently, in the last day or so, broke above its 50-day moving average, and we've had a nice little surge here. We're still working off of a wave low trigger, which occurred back here, back on the 30th. No, it occurred on the 27th, and you'll see why I'm talking about this, because our systems went long on the 27th here, and we've had a nice little rally here. I was a little concerned how it was going to react in around the 50-day moving average, but now that we're at least above it, it could come back, retest, but for at least right now, we're above it, and I would suspect that our next level would be this next resistance level, and in this particular case, the number is essentially 156. So I want to point out where the market is headed. It still has a little more potential upside at the 156 level. The weekly charts, so the other thing I want to point out is that if you come back here on this signal level, support and resistance level right here, fact is that right now we're in and around this level. If you see my cursor and look at it all the way across here, you'll see that last week it came up to the resistance level. And this week, we're starting to break through it and start to move ahead. It's not to say we can't get a little bit of a retracement, but this was a key level here. And so when we look at the weekly charts, especially on a 50 bar, or not this 50, there's 50 bars to this support level and resistance level, so that makes it extraordinarily strong. And you can see that this one right here is 45, and this is in this case weeks, not days. So we've got super strong resistance here that we're now toying with, and the fact that we're above it bodes well for that opportunity that I was saying that the market could still have a little more legs to the upside right here. What does this mean for our systems? I'll just quickly point this out, that if I come up to 30-year bonds, on the 27th, we actually had 4 systems trigger, and so we have a nice little profit going on per contract, and obviously you can trade this in larger scale, but the reality is that having penetrated that 50-day moving average, that yellow line that I was talking about, that there's still a little more upside potential to the market. So this is a market that we're going to be watching closely, but I think we'll just simply wait to see what the systems have to show for us. The other market I want to show you is RBOB gasoline, since it did have a nice little move here. All the technicals are strong, the technical ratings are strong. Unfortunately, what we have here is a pivot high. We've had a couple of them, but a pivot high. But mostly I want to show you is that we had a rocket phase that has occurred here in the RBOB, which is a little more significant, hence the reason I'm bringing it up in the conversation tonight. So if we pull up RBOB as a whole, I'll take a little second here to come up here. You'll see a very strong, I'm sure if you trade it, you know this, but a very strong trend to the upside. And this has been going on for quite some time. It broke through that resistance level, which I thought we were going to have some difficulty with, but it broke right through it, and we've been heading higher ever since. We've had a couple of instances of elastic levels where they've pivoted and told us that the market could be getting a little bit slow here and potentially reversing. But now that we have a power level, which is a little more significant indicator, and it is showing a rocket market, which is a market that has been moving very, very strong to the upside, and there's no reason why it theoretically couldn't continue to the upside. But whenever you get a rocket market, a lot of times what you're going to see is a little bit of a rest and a little bit of a reversal. So you'll see no resistance to the market on the daily bars, and if we click here on the weekly bars, you can see that this has tremendous legs to it. So who really knows where RBOB is going to be going, but on a weekly basis, it is certainly overbought. And as I mentioned, on a daily bar basis, the market is overbought, and that there's a really good chance that the market could reverse. On a similar nature, if we look at crude oil, which also, if we looked at the deep dive, would have a pivot high underway. It's not necessarily a rocket market with the power level suggesting the same thing, but we have a condition here where the market has certainly gotten ahead of itself, and that's where this elastic level pivot is now occurring. And you can see that if we use these resistance levels, that if you look at this one coming across on the daily bar basis, we came right up to it, stopped, and we reversed at least as of the last couple of days or so. So RBOB is showing just a tremendous amount of very strong trend. The crude oil is very similar, but it's almost gone a little more parabolic, and that being the case because of these two bars right here and this one right through here, that the market is gone parabolic from my definition, where it goes very, very strong in a couple of days, and it's a market that can obviously quickly reverse as well. So we're just going to have to see how things kind of play out here on the daily bars and on the weeklies. Unlike the RBOB, which had many a lot of resistance but well ahead of us, right now for crude oil, we're essentially there on the weekly bars, the numbers being 58.64 and 59.22. Those are the two resistance levels that we're heading towards. Obviously, with today's action being, at least as I'm speaking right now, it's at 57.10, that there's a little more potential upside. So the warning here, when we take a look at the deep dive, is that if I can find it here we go, on the RBOB and on crude oil itself, we have the pivot highs and the rocket market that I just referred to. So you should be paying very, very close attention to those particular markets. Maybe take a little bit of profit taking, but as a minimum, really watch over the market and make sure that everything is as it's supposed to be if you happen to be long the market. Mention this because our crude systems actually went short, today being the 7th. They actually went short the market, so we have two of them that just triggered. Now, those are the ones that triggered today, and we have a small little loss going on. But if we take a look at the exits, I just want to show you that we had a number of systems liquidate, specifically in crude oil. And you'll see that we had a number of longs that liquidated themselves. We had 4 longs that liquidated themselves at varying times in the morning, and it was one of these things that we had some nice surges here in crude oil. I'll come back to the daily bar, but the angst that we're seeing here in the market with the potential of the resistance, it's nice that the market has liquidated the longs, took some profits, not necessarily doing the same thing in RBOB because that's still strong, but the reality is that if you are in RBOB, you might want to consider looking to unwind some of those positions if you're in a position to do so. And it's probably a little more pronounced here in crude oil because of the resistance levels that I talked about. So keep that in mind between with what I was showing with the little more continued upside for the 30-year bonds and the potential reversal in RBOB with the rocket, and the most definitive deal here with the pivot highs in crude oil, the major resistance that we're seeing here, and the fact that the systems have in fact liquidated all of their longs and now are net short the market. It bodes well for potential reversal in RBOB as well. So those are the things that I wanted to show in tonight's deep dive. We'll take a look at 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 markets tomorrow. We'll see how things kind of play out. But thanks for watching, and we'll look at some more markets tomorrow.